The globalist plan to take down the whole world. I think all of you, or most all of you, would agree that there is such a plan, that it is well underway, and that none of us have the ability to stop it. We will have to wait and see, not much longer, how it develops, how it coalesces, and how long individuality will be allowed to remain on the planet. Preston James is here tonight. Very honored to have Preston back. He's a friend, a colleague, and one of the great people who comes on this program as often as he can. And his article of that same name, The Globalist Plan to Take Down the Whole World, is right up there at the top of headlines. So do read it. Go to his columnist archive on the left-hand side and enjoy and be enlightened by one of the most unique minds working in the field of so-called alternative media. The real news is what I call it. Welcome back, Preston.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
Always a pleasure. The one thing I've noticed about Paris and watching all the material that slides across my computer screen desk is that the people now they kind of break into camps whenever something bad happens. There are those that truly lament and mourn the dead and the injured and the wounded and the suffering. And then there are those who say, oh, it's a false flag. Somebody else did it. It wasn't as presented to us. And it may well be. I don't know. And then there are those who say, crisis actors. Nobody died. It was a complete fake. And then there are those who say it was all put together by the French government, and those who say that, no, it was the CIA and the Mossad that did it, and it was a professional commando operation. I'm seeing it all now. And that's about the only for sure that I can point to, is that everybody thinks they have the answer, and very few obviously know the exact truth. How does it look to you?
Well, I guess, Jeff, you were one of the first ones to ever even allow articles on the Internet about this New World Order drive by select individuals. And I have to go back to that I think what's important is not to get caught up in the peripheral. If there were, over 100 people truly killed, that's a horrible tragedy. But in order to prevent
we always have to look at the big picture. I was starting out at the macro or micro, going to the macro, and you're totally right.
But you know what? You were the first one that I can remember to ever allow publishing of any articles related to this New World Order globalist movement by the people that really run things.
Yeah.
But when you did that, did you ever have any idea that it was going to be this big, that it was going to become a threat during our lifetime?
Not this big, not this fast, absolutely overwhelming. The penetration into virtually every corner and nook in our lives, the way we live, is now clear. I won't say it's total, but it's damn close. The amount of spying, surveillance, if you want to call it that, is literally inconceivable to the average person. It is so thorough and so completely overwhelming. There is nowhere to go. There's no security. There's nowhere to hide. You are in their hands. We are. You are. All of us are.
I think the most upsetting thing to me is that you have a convergence of strange, evil interests. For example, let's say that you have, let's say there's 4 or 5 intelligence groups that have the technology to know everything that's going on, that have complex algorithms that will trace every phone call, every identifiable mercenary in the world. I believe that there was at least 5 intelligence agencies knew exactly what was coming down, but their own interests were such that it was more advantageous for them to sit back and let it happen than to warn anyone or to stop it, other than to get their own people out.
I concur. I've run a couple stories about forewarning and people who knew in advance. Even the Iraqis tried to warn the French. I mean, the word was out. You're correct.
So the sad part is that there's such a multiplicity of interests that you have people so completely compromised, that they're looking out for their own careers, they're looking out for the power of their own peer group and their own enterprise, to the point that they just shrug it off and say, well, this would have happened anyway. We can't stop this thing completely, so why get involved? Why throw ourselves on a sword for nothing? All we'll end up is getting fired and blacklisted, and we'll be in trouble.
Pretty sick.
We can't clean house, so that you end up what I call a total diffusion of responsibility, where everybody in power is responsible, but no one feels that they're totally responsible.
That's the watchword of our times: non-accountability, non-responsibility. It's always someone else's fault, and you could not be more correct. You're right, and it makes them actually a de facto accessory to mass murder. That's what they are.
Well,
by our silence, we allow,
that's
and they
true.
allow.
For example, you know that when people are elected to Congress the first time, they get a little visit and they're asked to sign an AIPAC loyalty oath. And basically what they're told is, this is just the way things are done here. They've been done this way for 15 years. And, if you want to be part of the system, you have to do this. Now, if you want to go out on your own, that's fine. And, maybe that's what your constituents want, but, you're going to be really isolated after a while, and you're not going to have any power. You're really not going to be able to represent your people the way you'd like to.
No.
You're going to have to be part of the system.
Nothing done.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And that's what happens too, Jeff. They become pariahs. And so I've had people in those positions tell me that they had to compromise to be able to do anything. And when they couldn't stand it anymore, they got out of politics.
Yeah, not surprised. That's the way it looks from the outside if you really watch it. And I think a lot of people are now. They can see these people as being ever more thin and lacking all substance. They're just phonies, and they're playing to absolutely cater to the power elite. And I don't know. To me, it's an obscenity.
Well, if you let's look at the core group that runs everything. That is apparently these people are deeply committed with their own religious beliefs, as well as all the commitments they've made to each other to take down the whole world, impose globalism, and destroy every single institution of government, every single state and country, using a globalist system of inflicting chaos at every level. And of course, it's the old British method that's been tuned to a honed edge, which is create massive conflict and division. If you can keep people fighting, it's easy to divide and conquer.
You mentioned Preston. You mentioned their religion. I'm not sure it's a religion at all. I view it as a cult.
It is. You're right. They themselves believe that they are close to God. They believe Lucifer's God. They really do. And they believe that they're anointed by him, and that they have to do some difficult things, but it's all necessary in order to bring the world to a place where it's purified. And they really don't look on the average man as a human being. They look on him as cattle or as an insect. They call them useless eaters. They really do.
I call them goyim. We can just we can call them.
But not
goyim.
All the people in the inner circle view people that way or call them that.
No,
but they view them. The main word I kept hearing from my sources, which are pretty close to the center of it, were useless eaters, and they believe that for them to have an intergenerational impact, it's only because they're chosen, that their family lines were chosen, and they go all the way back. And they really truly believe they go all the way back to the Garden of Eden, and they're the chosen ones, and that their job is to liberate the world from the order that the Creator imposed on them. But they believe that Lucifer is rising to become God of the universe. He's going to take over and clean house and straighten out all these misguided ways. They truly believe this. And they have everything completely rationalized. They go to bed at night with no guilt, no sympathy. They're really functioning as pure psychopaths.
Well, that's psychopathy. And they are psychopaths. Anyone who lacks moral constraint or moral values or consideration or honors life is a psychopath, and we are overrun with them. They've all risen to the top, and they've all taken charge. It's just amazing.
Well, that's right. You can't take over the world unless you have no conscience and unless you're willing to be part of the system. And you know, the system that they've developed, I have listed 8 points. There's more fine points, but it is really an effective system for taking down the world, because if you make the money, if you create the money, and then you lend it out to people using sleight of hand black magic to distract them. You know, if you've ever been to a magic show, you know that it's all based on visual distraction and illusions.
Sure.
Well, that's what they're doing with us. They're distracting us and illusion, but they're lending us what should be our own money in the first place at pernicious usury, and they're earning huge incomes from nothing. And these incomes keep expanding. You know, it's like when I was in graduate school, I did research on the mafia in Chicago, and I was able to get information from one of the family members down there. And what I was told was that during World War II, they lent $1 million into funds so that they could build 5 different tollways. I don't know when they were built, but the funds started during the end of World War II with all the money that they had made. And some of it was prohibition money. And what they did is they invested, I believe it was $1 million, one of the families, and they set it up on an increasing principle so that the interest payments that were made to them for the tollway was never enough to cover the interest that accrued. So the principal kept expanding. Therefore, all the payments too kept expanding. Yeah. And I always hated driving through Chicago because you think with all the money they're charging for tollways, they'd be the best roads in the world. But they're not. They're crap, you know, potholes and all stuff. Where is the money going? Well, I found out that the money was going to these families who are making just huge, interest payments for nothing. And
That's amazing.
Those things, they should have been paid off years ago. And this is probably true of all the, the tollways. But it's like when Las Vegas was run by the mafia and the FBI went and broke it up. They found out the 5 families were in there. They broke it up. And then what you had is a new, bigger mafia coming in there. The globalists came in and took it over.
The corporatocracy came in.
And the sad part is they made a partnership with the IRS, and the IRS said you can do anything you want as long as you pay the taxes. Now, I interviewed in graduate school a number of high-class call girls that charge big money and drug dealers and people like that, and I always said, aren't you afraid of the IRS coming after you? Because they'll go after everybody. And they said, no, we pay our taxes. We report what we do on our tax forms, and no one ever bothers us. So apparently, it's like in California, as long as they buy their tax stamps. I talked to a marijuana grower one time. I said, aren't you in trouble with the state? He said, oh, no, we have a secret tax stamp system. This was 20 years ago. But there were a few select farmers did you know this, Jeff, that they paid these tax stamps?
No, and they were allowed to go their way as long as they did their tax stamps.
So apparently, that's all that the IRS is interested in, is getting their cut. So now we have Las Vegas out there with these big international corporations and partners with the tax people. They have the state and the federal tax people, Jeff, right down in the county rooms, getting their money right there.
Right off the top. Yeah. Amazing. We are actually now in debt to these people, America. $65 trillion. That's the real amount. A former GAO chief has come forward and said the real debt is $65 trillion to these people. That's all unconstitutional. It shouldn't be. We never should have given up our right to create our own money. This is insanity. It's crazy. The Congress had to be as corrupt as it could possibly be in 1913 to pass that whole thing. It boggles the mind. $65 trillion in debt, Preston. We'll never get out of that. Ever.
No, you're right. And
it's like student loans, but worse.
Oh, yeah. Well, how many billions of dollars are these college
I think it's
students?
$1 trillion.
Yeah. And the thing is that 40% that graduated this year could not get careers.
No career, no job. No. I think it's $1 trillion plus. And if we wanted to ever really invest in our country, we just forgive all those loans immediately, wipe them out. We should forget all the debt. We shouldn't be in debt. There's no reason for us. The country wasn't set up to run in debt mode, period. It also wasn't set up to run in tax mode, period.
That's right. Well, we had two major bailouts, $2.2 trillion, and that money would have paid off every home mortgage in the country and would have paid off every college loan at the time. And now we have QE. I don't know how much that is. I've lost track of it, but I think there's a point coming where the American dollar has been so degraded, so debased. Is it really going to be worth anything when the foreign countries start cashing it in?
Probably not. Economists understate the real extent of the U.S. government's financial commitments, which in reality exceed $65 trillion. That's the government's former top accountant speaking. He told that to RT. A debt fix would be needed to tackle the tax code, the debt ceiling, and Pentagon spending. Ain't gonna happen. So it'll just keep going up. And when it gets up so high, they'll do something and they'll start over. They'll reset. They'll start the game all over again. But that money it doesn't exist. It really shouldn't exist.
Well, what was the figure that every family in America is in debt for $460,000?
It's
absurd.
I'm sure. Well, let's just talk about real debt. I mean, what people consider real debt, not the stuff they can't see, like $65 trillion. The average home is about $25,000 in debt, credit cards, time plans, whatever they're paying on, not mortgage, other debts. So, yeah, the country is already in one big FEMA camp. It's called Camp Usury, and they're in it.
You're right. I never heard that before. That's
my little
a creative way to put it. And really, it's been imposed on us because, as you said, the federal taxes are completely illegal, unconstitutional.
Oh, yeah.
The way that senators are elected is completely unconstitutional. Some of these, the so-called constitutional amendments were never legally ratified. There's so much corruption that goes back so far. Andrew Jackson, he routed the globalist bankers out, and he identified. He said they were from hell, that they were the devil. He fought them with everything he had.
He was right.
Yeah, and really, they got back in 1913, and it's been downhill ever since.
But the IRS code, apparently, I had a guest on last night. He's done the work that you've heard about it, and many of you listening have, if not last night before, that the actual tax code only applies to people in the District of Columbia and the territories like Puerto Rico. It
I've
doesn't
heard that. He's
apply
right,
to the
too.
state.
Yeah.
Yes, he is right. Now, in your piece, we have another picture of the Georgia Guidestones. Some insiders claim the globalist New World Order cabal is required by God Almighty Creator to all to clearly state their intentions in order to inform the world of what they plan to do, and in this way obtain implied consent of the masses. Now, there's a lot of truth in that. They do telegraph things in advance.
Yes, they do, and they use children's cartoons. Jeff, can you believe that? They use various movies and whatever, and for people that look at all this and have database ways to look at it, it's all there. And World War II was actually announced in stone. It was cast into a stone monument, which is now at the place where I think Hitler's first office was. So I mean, they always do stuff like this, and they really, and insiders have told their family members and friends that Lucifer's a fair god, and he requires them to inform everybody ahead of time so they have a fair chance.
I've heard that. I've heard that.
And also, that includes people like you and like me. And what really shocked me was I found out like the John Birch Society was actually secretly funded by the Rockefeller family. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is very shocking. And not only that, the John Birch Society, but a lot of the oppositional groups, like you have the Kennedy assassination groups. You have one law office down in Dallas, and one floor is they both are staffed with retired FBI and Intel people, and one CIA people, and one floor they do nothing but try to crack the cover up and put out facts proving that the CIA and the government and the mafia assassinated President Kennedy.
Right.
Lyndon Johnson. The other floor is constantly ghostwriting books for people and putting them out there for like Norman Mailer and all these
They're
people.
still at it.
They're still at it, and they eat lunch together. That's the worst part. And they get paid out of a perpetuity fund that's set up like a cemetery, so that the interest keeps coming in. Now, here's the interesting thing. A lot of the intel work that's done stateside, inside the United States, is done with perpetuity funds set up from all the massive drug dealing, all these various black operations money. Now, as the U.S. petrodollar fails, the interest system is going to shrink. It's already shrinking, and you're going to see a lot of these covert operations dried up and going out of business.